Hello, and welcome to another presentation of the Rift Valley Network webinar series. So my name is Andrew Harvey, and I am the host for today's talk. If you are participating in the live webinar, you can submit questions or comments in the chat module of the Zoom application at any time during the presentation, or ask a voice question by raising your hand once the presentation is complete. And today's presenters are Amina Abdallah, Kuria Mdoe, and Amani Lusekelo. Amina Abdallah is an assistant lecturer in the Department of Languages and Literature at Dar es Salaam University College of Education. She holds a Bachelor of Education in Arts and a Master of Arts with Education in the Linguistics stream from the University of Dar es Salaam. Her research interests focused on the morphosyntax of Bantu languages, specifically the structure of the Rangi noun phrase, alongside broader interests in language contact. Kuria Mdoe is a lecturer at the Department of Languages and Literature at Dar es Salaam University College of Education. He holds a PhD in linguistics from the University of Dar es Salaam. He currently teaches general linguistics and communication skills, undergraduate courses, and postgraduate linguistics courses such as advanced phonology, research methods for linguists, and African language structure at the Dar es Salaam University College of Education and at the University of Dar es Salaam. His research focus is on Nilo-Saharan linguistics, language contact, and ethnobotany. Amani Lusekelo is a professor of African languages and literature with over 20 years of experience in higher education in Tanzania and beyond. He earned his PhD from the University of Botswana in 2012 and bachelor and master's degrees from the University of Dar es Salaam between 2001 and 2007. Currently, Professor Lusekelo is the deputy principal dealing with affairs of academic research and consultancy at Dar es Salaam University College of Education. His scholarship focuses extensively on the morphosyntax of Bantu languages, specifically Nyakusa and Swahili, and argument structure, alongside broader interests in linguistic landscapes, onomastics, language contact, and anthropological linguistics within the Tanzanian context. In the Tanzanian Rift Valley, he conducts research primarily on Datooga, Hadza, and Sukuma. He is active in mentorship, having supervised to graduation 22 MA students and 12 PhD candidates since 2013. He's currently engaged in a research project hosted at Hamburg University dealing with English in its local multilingual ecologies, together with Roland Kiessling and Kapingu Mpologo for the Tanzanian subproject. As a recurring contributor to the Tanzanian Rift Valley Network, Prof. Lusekelo has previously presented on topics ranging from Hadza language change and nomenclature to the ethnobotany of the Iraqw people. So please join me in welcoming Amani, Amina, Kuria as they present Gorwaa and Alagwa Loanwords in Rangi Semantic Fields Approach. So Amina, Kuria, and Amani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. We would like to share the findings on the loanwords from Alagwa and Gorwaa, which occur in Rangi. And technically, the data come from the fieldwork by Amina Abdallah, who will share the methods and the findings. So I'll talk about the introduction, and Kuria, I think, will finish up with the final part of the presentation. So the intent is to see how, based on number, the smaller ethnic groups like Alagwa and Gorwaa appear to influence the larger ethnic groups like the Rangi, who, based on population, the Rangi outnumber the other groups. And currently, the growth of the Rangi population is, I think, faster and more bigger than the population of the Alagwa and Gorwaa. And we look into the mainly the strategies for the integration of lexical words, which come from these two southern Cushitic languages. Amina will also talk about the morphological incorporation of the loanwords, while Kuria Mdoe will talk about the semantic integration of the loanwords. I think we should go to the next slide. A little bit about these speech communities as they occur in the Tanzanian Rift Valley. They occur in Manyara region and mainly Babati, and they occur in Dodoma region, mainly Kondoa. And the Alagwa people and their language distribution is, we know that they are West Rift, Southern Cushitic, and their population is a little bit smaller if we base on the grammar book by Martin Mous, or the Atlas ya Lugha za Tanzania by Language of Tanzania. You can see the frustrations about the population of Alawa speakers there. We are happy that in Tanzania, the Alagwa people call their language Lagwaisa, and is having the introduction of the name. And Derek Nass and some other literature mention the label like Wasi or Vasi, being the native people of the area for the Alagwa and Gorwaa. And with the geographical distribution of the Alagwa and Kondoa, the primary area would be Kondoa and Dodoma, with an estimated population of that number, and Hanang being the secondary zone with a little bit fewer population, and Manyara having the least population of the Alagwa people. And based on Kiessling Legel, the Alagwa are an endangered language. That is the reality of the Alagwa. The Gorwaa, now Andrew can come in. The Gorwaa they are also Southern Cushitic, with that number of speakers, over 132,748. I understand, Andrew, you did a survey on their population, and you see the number available in the Language of Tanzania project. More or less the same, but with a lot of variation. We know the identity and the capacity to speak the language and the social affiliation have a contribution on the number of the speakers for the Gorwaa, but at least the population is established if you compare with the Alagwa speakers. And the other term is the Fiomi. It's used to refer to the Gorwaa or Fiomi, and they are primarily in Babati, where we have the largest population. They are also in Hanang with a very few population, but they are also available in Kondoa, in the northern parts of Kondoa, where Amina went to collect data from. And based on Kiessling Leger again, Gorwaa is endangered, and Andrew had a project on that. So we know the situation now. Andrew may punish us if we get wrong about the status of Gorwaa. Can we go to Rangi now? Rangi, the largest population. And it's Bantu of the Guthrie's group F33, together with other group 33 languages like Nyamwezi, Sukuma, and Nilamba. And you can see the number of speakers is a little bit higher, 370,000 in the Language of Tanzania project, and to 420,000 in another source by Stegen and colleagues. And it's mainly, for the distribution, is mainly in Kondoa, but we have a few of them in Babati and Hanang. Technically, if we were to think of the number of speakers in the Babati-Kondoa highway, the Rangi outnumber the rest. It's more in population, they are more in numbers as compared to Alagwa and Gorwaa. Can we move? And when we look into the literature about the contact situation, you can see where we are in that yellow dot between Babati and Kondoa. As I said, the speakers of the three languages, Alagwa, Gorwaa, and Rangi, are situated there. And Kondoa becomes very interesting because we have a large population of the Rangi, which you assume by only the matter of population to be a dominant language, as compared to the Alagwa are also mainly in Kondoa. But in numbers, they are smaller. The Gorwaa are in Babati, but a section of the Gorwaa are in Kondoa. Can we go to the other slide so that I talk further about the... Yes, so now we are taking it from Kiessling et al., the popular map, and you can see the slot for the Rangi, and the slot for the Gorwaa and Alagwa. As far as Kondoa is concerned, the Rangi and the Alagwa are in Kondoa, and a section of the Gorwaa are in northern parts of Kondoa. And with their settlement in the area and the continued contact, we assume in the literature we read the Rangi are new to the area. The Cushitic groups, now we are taking the maybe ancestors of the Alagwa and Gorwaa. They were there some many years ago as compared to the Rangi Bantu, and we were citing Christopher Everett. I know some who have questions for that, and we can begin and can continue the debate. And we are focusing on three areas in the northern part of Kondoa, where you have a section of the Alagwa, a section of the Rangi, and a section of the Gorwaa. And the Amina will also talk of research, comparative research in Haubi, where she went and checked the acceptability of the loanwords identified in Haubi. Is it possible for me to stop there so that Amina takes over?
Okay, so we have seen the contact situation between these three languages. Now, it has been accepted by contact linguists that when two or more languages come into contact, one of the immediate outcome, will be the borrowing of words. So same applies here. Long-term contact between these three languages has led to the grammatical and lexical transfers in both directions. And there is enough evidence for the influence of Rangi on these Cushitic languages like Alagwa and Burunge. However, there is less evidence for the influence of these minority languages into Rangi. Therefore, we thought that we need to address this gap by examining the Alagwa and Gorwaa loanwords in Rangi. Yes. So basically, we selected three villages as our study area, and the primary data came from Sakami and Kwahengwa, which are both found in Kondoa district, with speakers of these three languages. And also we decided to go to Haubi, which is a village inhabited almost by Rangi alone. And the aim was to check whether there are some Alagwa and Gorwaa loanwords which have managed to penetrate into Haubi, a purely Rangi village. Yeah. So we collected our data through some of the method, including elicitation sessions, semi-structured interviews, and also we reviewed some of the documents. We reviewed a paper by Stajan, titled First Step in Reconstructing the Rangi Language History, and Stajan tried to outline about 26 Rangi words, which he thought that they could have been borrowed from one of the Cushitic group, maybe Iraqw, Burunge, Alagwa, or Gorwaa. Therefore, we we had the lists and then we submitted to the informant so that they can verify whether these words have been borrowed from any of the Cushitic language. Also, we consulted a book by Mous, 2024, so as to look for the source word, especially for the Alagwa. Yeah. So our finding shows that there are about 81 Alagwa and Gorwaa loanwords which have been borrowed into Rangi. Therefore, we are basically working with 81 entries, yeah, as you can see from the table. And as you can see, there are some of the words which are borrowed from one language alone. For instance, we have word like kalakaka, which is borrowed from Gorwaa, word kirikanka, meaning a red-headed lizard. Also, we have a word like chakai, which is borrowed from Alagwa and Gorwaa word sakai. Therefore, this is a shared lexical item. But also, we have word like wama, which is borrowed from Alagwa word kwama, to mean ghetto enclosure. So some of the words are from Qorro alone, others are from Alagwa alone, and some are shared lexical item. You will all agree that these two languages, Alagwa and Qorro, they belong to the same language group. Therefore, there is this high possibility that they share many of the similar lexical item. Again, from the table, you can see that there are some of the loanwords which are noun, and some are verbs. For instance, we have word like sakata, meaning hunt. Yeah, but also we have other word like which we termed them as a preposition based on the function which they perform. For instance, we have word like sa, borrowed from the Alagwa term sa, to mean because of or for someone. So in Rangi it is used maybe when someone is saying, I did something for you, or I did something because of this. Yeah. Okay, so we decided now to categorize the identified loanwords on the basis of donor language, and the aim was to ascertain which between the two donor languages, which one contributes high number of loanwords, and we were motivated by the fact that the two languages, Alagwa and Gorwaa, are said to have interaction with Rangi of different degrees. Yeah, so we said we should categorize the loanwords to see which language contribute much. And our findings show that Alagwa is the primal donor with about 40 loanwords compared to Gorwaa, which contributes only 7 loanwords. And some, about 24 of loanwords are shared lexical item from both languages. Yeah. So again, can you go to the next slide, please? Yes. So we were curious to know what could be the possible reasons for the dominance of Alagwa loanwords over the Gorwaa. And we came up with about 2 possible reasons. One is historical shifting power relation between Alagwa and Rangi. As for now, Rangi are said to exert influence on Alagwa, but the historical records show that during the colonial time, the status of Alagwa king was so greater to the point that he was appointed as the chief of the entire region, including the Rangi. Therefore, such a historical privilege might likely have elevated the status of Alagwa rather than Gorwaa, and therefore encouraging more borrowing of Alagwa words into Rangi than the Gorwaa. And the second possible reason is limited direct and prolonged contact between Rangi and Gorwaa. Again, the historical records shows that the Alagwa are the earliest Cushitic language group to settle in villages such as Sakami and Kohengwa and Kondoa in general. And therefore, later on, it is when Gorwaa came and they found Alagwa already settling there, and Rangi came years later. Yeah. Also, at the core of the Rangi villages, the Alagwas have had a larger speaker population than the Qorro, and this remains the case today. Yeah, so maybe the smaller speaker population maybe reduce the opportunity for sustained and prolonged contact with Rangi, and thereby limiting the extent of borrowing from Gorwaa. Yeah. So this could be the two possible factors for the predominance of Alagwa loans in Rangi over the Gorwaa. Yeah. Okay. Now, again, we wanted to know, as we have seen from the table shared previously, there are some of the words which are verbs, some of the borrowed words, other of the borrowed words are nouns. So we wanted to know which among these three word categories represent the highest number of borrowed loanwords, and therefore we categorize them on the basis of their word class. And we found that nouns are the most borrowed compared to verbs and prepositions. Since verb they are just 4, while prepositions are only 2. And again, we wanted to see why the nouns are borrowed more than the verbs and the prepositions. So we associated our result with the finding by Myers-Scotton, 2006, and she's saying that many of the loan words are cultural borrowings. That is they are used to introduce, to express newly introduced the object or concept, and such a reference are mostly expressed through nouns. That's why nouns becomes the most borrowed word categories compared to other word class. And this is also reflected in our study, where we found that most of the borrowed nouns express the newly encountered object and the concept. Therefore, they are more of cultural borrowings rather than additive or core borrowings. Also, noun could have been borrowed more than other word categories because of the morphological complexity of the verbs, especially. They are said to be more morphologically complex, especially during integration process. You will all agree that when a word is borrowed, it needs to be phonologically, morphologically integrated into the recipient language. Therefore, the verbs especially are said to have complex morphology, which is difficult for them to be integrated into the recipient language. So maybe that is why nouns are borrowed much, because they are less morphologically complex than other word categories. Okay. Now, again, we were curious to know, why would Rangi borrow verbs? At least we understand that nouns could have been borrowed because the Rangi are newcomers in the region, and therefore they met Alagwa and Gorwaa, who had already had the names for the plants and other objects. But why verb? And we traced it back. We went through some of the literature, and they're saying the Bantus appear to have been hunters and gatherers, and they adopted farming from Cushitic or other groups, and therefore we came to conclude that the borrowing of the verb, for instance, sakata, meaning hunting, seems to be strange, since in other Bantu languages, which are also spoken in Tanzanian Rift Valley area, there is a verb called sampa, which is used for hunting. So to us, this is strange, yeah. And maybe we are saying maybe the verb sakata could means or introduce a special hunting culture, which was not present in Rangi. As for the verb ko, which means take something by force, is borrowed from the verb oho, meaning seize, catch, or take somebody by force from Alagwa. And this is because we concluded that because Rangi, as well as Gogo, Nilamba, and Nyaturu lack this phenomenon. Yeah, so we said maybe the verb comes from the Alagwa word oho, and it is popular in Alagwa than in Rangi. Yeah. Okay. So again, we wanted to know, how are these words, the identified loan words, are distributed on the basis of the semantic fields. Yeah, and here we adopted the semantic field classification framework proposed by Haspelmas and Tadmo. And according to them, the loanword from all languages around the world can be classified into 24 semantic field. Yeah. However, the finding of our study showed that the borrowed items are distributed across 13 semantic field only, as you can see from the table here. So we have fields which have high number of loanwords. We also have some of the semantic field which have low number of loanwords. So again, we for instance, in a semantic field of agricultural vegetation, we have about 21 loanwords. Same applies to animals and food and drinks. Yeah. So let's see the examples of loanwords in each of these semantic fields from both the less represented and most represented semantic field. For instance, in semantic field of animals, we have words like maka, meaning beast, or wild animal, which is borrowed from Alagwa and Gorwaa term maka, to means the same. But also we have another word mukonkanai, meaning bedbug, which is borrowed from Alagwa term konkanai. Yeah. In agriculture and vegetation, we have plant names like mchachafa, which is borrowed from Alagwa and Gorwaa term sasafa. Yeah. Also, we have another plant called ui, which is borrowed from Alagwa term uimo. And also in food and drinks domain, we have word like irusu, meaning local beer, borrowed from both Alagwa and Gorwaa term urusu, and kulutu, meaning cowpea leaves, borrowed from Alagwa and Gorwaa term kolonso. So these three represent the semantic field which have captured high number of loanwords compared to other semantic field. And the result now contrasts with the one proposed by Haspelmas and Tadmo in their work, where they are saying that the borrowings tend to be concentrated in field like modern world, also field like clothing and grooming, yeah. But as our studies now shows, this is the domains where the high number of loanwords are concentrated. And this could be maybe as a result of the nature of languages in contact. Remember, these three are ethnic, both are ethnic community languages, yeah. Therefore, borrowing in this domain is anticipated, yeah. Okay, so less represented semantic fields include the body. Here we have terms like hiri, meaning west, which is borrowed from Alagwa term hiri. And also we have in the domain of field of house, we have a word like kitara, meaning a small house inhabited by unmarried man, yeah, borrowed from Alagwa and Gorwaa term kitarimo, meaning the same. In kinship, we have term like iyo, meaning mother, which is borrowed from Alagwa word iyo, yeah. And also in hunting, we have word like sakata, yeah. So these are the less represented semantic field based on our finding. Okay, so we wanted now to know why such a skewed distribution. Why some of the field have high number of loanwords while others have low number of loanwords. And we're saying that then the high number of loanwords in field like animals, agriculture and vegetation could be associated with the fact that Rangi are regarded as newcomers, both in Tanzanian Rift Valley and the Kondoa district in particular. Therefore, by the time they were arriving, they found Alagwa and Gorwaa present. And therefore, the Alagwa and the present already had the names for plants and animals, yeah? Therefore, the Rangi had no option rather than borrowing a word from these two languages, yeah? In contrast, they had low number of loanwords in the field like the body, the house, kinship, is associated maybe with the fact that this field represents the universal concept for which each language is expected to have its own native vocabularies to express such concept. Therefore, there's no need for borrowing in such a field. Yeah. Okay. Now, okay, so after seeing how these were the identified loanwords are distributed on the basis of their donor language, word class semantic field, we were also interested to know how are these loanwords morphologically integrated into Rangi, given the fact that the donor languages, Alagwa and Gorwaa, differ significantly, especially morphologically, from Rangi. These two, they have different morphological structure, especially in nominal classification system. While the Alagwa and Gorwaa use gender-based classification system where nouns are classified into different genders such as masculine, feminine, or neuter. Rangi uses a noun classification system where nouns are classified into different noun classes. Yeah. However, Qorro and Alagwa nouns, they might also be categorized as denoting either singular or collective entity, with their singular nouns forming plural through suffixation process only. In contrast, Rangi nouns, yes, they are also could be categorized as denoting singular or collective entities. However, the plural formation is not through suffixation process as in Alagwa and Gorwaa, but rather through prefixation process, where noun class prefixes are attached. And according to Sturgeon, there are about, of course, Sturgeon said Rangi has about 17 noun classes. He didn't include class number 15, most cases, which is ku, for instance, kusakata, which is used to form gerund. Yeah, so we included that. So we came up with about 18 Rangi noun classes. And therefore, the Alagwa and the Gorwaa loanwords, especially the nouns, are assigned one of these noun classes regardless of their gender. Yeah. So out of the 18 Rangi noun classes, the borrowed nouns are assigned to only these classes. Class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 10, 12, 19, 13, and 14. And again, the distribution is not the same. There are some of the noun classes which have attracted high number of loanwords. For instance, high number of noun loans are assigned to noun class 9, 10, and noun class 5, 6. Other classes contain only small proportions of loanwords. So these are the examples of words, the loanwords, which have been assigned into these classes. For example, noun class 1, 2, we have a word like sakata, where is assigned class 1, 2 as musakati, to means hunter, and vasakati, to means hunters. And also have class 3, 4, we have word like chachafa, which is integrated into this class as muchachafa and michachafa. And interestingly, even the name where these plants are so many is called the chachafa. So it is a Rangi word, which is, a place name which is borrowed actually from Alagwa and Gorwaa. Then there are so many kind of place names of names from Alagwa and Gorwaa. Yeah. With regard to class 5, 6, you have word like jengu, which is integrated as ijengu and majengu. Now in class 10, 9, 10, we have word like ndakwi, to means donkey, which is borrowed from Alagwa and Gorwaa term dakwai. Yeah. So this is a picture. Okay, please allow me to end here so I can give the floor to Kuria. Kuria, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Amina, for such enriching presentation of the finding. Now, to wind up, let's see the semantic changes in the borrowed words. And out of the 81 loanwords, 11 showed semantic changes, which can be grouped into two: semantic broadening and semantic shift. And some examples of broadening are like the noun marker, the loanword marker, which is original form is makar, forgive my pronunciation, which originally meant beast or wild animal, but it acquired the meaning broadened to include beast, wild animal, and now the other meaning dangerous person. Again, we have wama, which originally meant a cattle enclosure, then broadened to mean also a compound. And again, we have mpunta, which shifted from a castrated male goat to the new meaning in Rangi, a non-castrated male sheep. And then we had irusu, which originally meant non-alcoholic local drink, which shifted to an alcoholic local brew in Rangi. So these were the observed semantic changes. And it was not semantically, there were no such big changes as we saw with the other components such as morphology and the likes. So conclusively, what can we say about this is that we collaborate with Kiessling that as regards the outcome of long-term contact between Rangi, Alagwa, and Gorwaa, it resulted into borrowing into the majority language Rangi, as it was shown. So the dominant languages such as Rangi may borrow lexical items from less dominant languages, as it is indicated here. So the number doesn't count, but historically powerful society influences other languages because historically the Rangi found the Alagwa and the Gorwaa there. So as we saw with the verbs, future research should look upon borrowing of lexical verbs into Rangi. I think we need to go more into the semantic of this sakata, that is hunt. Was this a special technique of hunting, or what was it? We need to understand further because in other neighboring communities such as the Gogo, Niramba, Nyaturu, and even the Sukuma, they have terms for hunting. Maybe it was a specialized form of hunting that could it be captured using these available hunting means in the neighboring Bantu languages. So much needs to be looked at that. Because for the verb like ko, as it was said, yeah, we understand why it was borrowed. It says to take by force. Again, we need to better understand the semantics, what was being taken by force and where was it taken to. Because in other Bantu languages, we have the verb like catch, not taken by force, catch, as seen in those words in Gogo, Nilamba, and Sukuma also, which don't convey the meaning of taking by force. Therefore, the essence taking by force could only be captured by using the borrowed words. So technically, those were our remarks, and this is a list of some of the references that we used. Thank you very much, and back to you, Harvey.
Well, Amina, Kuria, Amani, thank you for your presentation. We can now begin the question and answer section. The question and answer section will be open to voice questions as well as written questions. If you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand in the non-verbal controls present underneath the participant panel, and I'll call on you. If you prefer to ask a written question, you can do so using the Zoom chat module, and I'll read out that question. A reminder that the webinars are recorded and will be made available online. So if you do ask a question, this will be part of the recording and released on the YouTube channel as well as Zenodo. Well, first of all, thank you for that. It was really nice to see sort of a well-focused talk like this on a particular body of data. Maybe my first question is, how did we determine the direction of borrowing? How do we know that a form was borrowed into Rangi from either Alagwa or Gorwaa, not that it went the other way?
The direction of borrowing, if I may say something, maybe by looking at the structure, the morphological structure of the borrowed item. So the structure of the languages, they differ. For instance, for the nouns, we looked at gender. It's not marked in some of it's not marked in Bantu, and the lack of noun classes. So we determined that these originally was Afro-Asiatic and came to Bantu and was assigned the noun class system.
All right, okay. This makes good sense. It's a good criteria. I thought that the word for either a household or a house for a single man, this was interesting. You guys had identified it as a borrowing from Gorwaa Alagwa into Rangi. I find this interesting. I mean, this form tala, which is kitarimo, right, in a language like Gorwaa or Alagwa. It would strike me that this seems like it might be Bantu. I see other Bantu languages in the area have these forms like matala or kitala or kita, these kind of things, meaning household or a place where a house used to be. I don't think that this invalidates your methodology, but I think it's one maybe that we need to look into a little bit. And of course, like, you know, I mean, the only reason that I know this particular one is because I have that particular piece of data, right? So all of this is to say is that, well, I think it's interesting to look at these individual cases and see what else we get. But Selena had her hand up. So please, Selena, go ahead and you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just want to congratulate the presenter for the informative presentation. But just to add, I don't know if this would answer your question as well. I think it is a great question knowing the direction of this borrowing. So I wanted to, I don't know, to advise them to include maybe the phonological thing. The phonological process maybe would also tell us maybe the borrowing is from these Cushitic languages, because an example of the word like hlakata, like hlakat, that word like hlakat or daqwa, the donkey word, how we pronounce it we also pronounce the same way in Iraqw. So when you look at this word, we can say maybe we have this repair strategy where we know that in Bantu languages, we do not have sounds like sha. That is why they end up looking for a sound that is close to that sha. They end up having sa. That is why they say sakata, because they do not have the sound like sha. The same way to the like the pharyngeal sounds. So since many Bantu languages do not have sounds like as we say, maybe like that why. That why, so because they do not have the pharyngeal sounds, they move to the closest sounds, such as the velar sounds. That is why they substitute that with dakwai. So I would say that maybe this could also be the reason, or maybe the reason for saying that maybe maybe we borrowed words from these languages where they had sounds that are more complex for Bantu speakers. That is why they end up simplifying that to sounds like velar sounds, and then for the sha, they end up using the s sound. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Selena. Do any of you have anything that you'd like to add to that
Yes.
or respond?
Andrew, I wanted to go back to Tala, which I have, maybe it appears in areas where we have the Cushitic speakers. But if we go further north, you have Kaya or Kaja for a homestead, or Tongo, a place which was a homestead, then people have moved. And some of the languages has, I think, adopted the word Nzengo. Nzengo, as in Sukuma. Nzengo is a village place, which I assume comes from Zenga, to build. So the buildings will be Nzengo or Majengo. And I doubt whether Tala could be available in Bantu areas where we don't have the Cushitic speakers.
Very
like
interesting.
among the Yao or Makonde or the Nyakyus and the Fats or the Ngoni of Yam. So it's likely Tala might be borrowed from Cushitic to Bantu.
Okay, so it's sort of and this, of course, is where your wider experience with Bantu languages in the area sort of really comes in. So perhaps, yeah, it could be the other way around. All of this is to say is that it's interesting, and maybe contesting a few of these will help us learn a little bit more. I noticed that Lizzie Poole also mentions that there's a word ketara in Mbugwe, but of course that wouldn't invalidate your observation or your assertion, Amani. Um, uh, Lizzie also has a question here. Did you include Burunge in your research as well, or not yet? There are areas where the Rangi and Burunge live quite mixed together, so it would be interesting to add Burunge into the investigation.
Okay, unfortunately, we didn't include Burunge. However, Kiessling 2001, he has a paper on integration of Bantu loans into Burunge, where the Bantu loan concerned Swahili and the Rangi. Yeah, so he has some of the Swahili and the Rangi which are borrowed into Burunge, but also he briefly mentioned few of the Rangi words which he think they could have been borrowed from Burunge into Rangi. Therefore, maybe in future we might think of including the Burunge loanwords in Rangi, and also we are looking forward to include the phonological aspect on how the loanwords are phonologically integrated into Rangi. Yeah.
Wonderful. So places to go in the future.
Yeah.
Kuria, Amani, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to that? I see that we have a few questions coming, so maybe we could address those.
Yeah, so Burunge, and I think we have a lot of open grounds for us to go into, because Burunge is in the south, and Sandawe is in the south as well, south of the Rangi. So there will be a lot of influence from those other languages as well. We need time to go there and see what is happening. And I'm happy to have learned that Ketala is is available in Mbugwe. Yeah, and the words like yes, the sakata and the donkey. Those could be easily deciphered as they're coming from Iraqw or Cushitic.
It's quite possible.
And does that mean that the donkeys were not available in the Rangi-speaking community before? And so the Rangi had to adopt the donkey keeping or donkey culture into their lives. They will need to continue thinking.
Regarding ketara, I notice that Lizzie also mentions ketara in Mbugwe means something like ghorofa in Swahili, so the second floor or level of a building. So it's a slightly different meaning as well. So this is in the chat if you want to take notes from that. But I'll move on to Martin. Martin, you have a question. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
It was a wonderful presentation. I really loved it. And of course, I love the area and these languages. And I have just a few comments. Then on this last one, I'm very happy with this discussion on the Kitara, because it's a puzzle to me. I have always, like Andrew, assumed that this must be from Bantu, but we never could really pinpoint to a Bantu source. So I definitely need to go into the semantics with that to get some more insight there. On the Sakat, the situation is rather complex with the hunting. I mean, all the major language families in the area have a verb very similar to that. So in Proto-Nilotic, it's something like lock, but in South Nilotic, it's klakat. So very similar to the West Rift South Cushitic. The West Rift South Cushitic klakat, yeah, it has it is inherited from Cushitic, because there are cognates in the rest, the sak and shak, but the at ending is not present in the rest of Cushitic. And so there, I think that South Nilotic influenced South Cushitic in the two verbs being so similar that they copied that ending in at, because at, I mean, in the Cushitic family, that in Iraqw, it could be seen as a kind of middle or stative, durative ending, but that doesn't make sense to hunting, whereas in Nilotic, the at verbal extension means to go away, which fits semantically a bit better with hunting. But then in Bantu, and even in Proto-Great Lakes Bantu, there is this shaka, to maybe not specifically to hunt, but to go out to find food. So it is all over in East African Bantu. You have such verbs with saka or shaka, but very few languages, Bantu languages in East Africa, have sakata with the at ending. That's only Langi and I think Chaga and there's one other one. This is intriguing, because why would you add the at? It is a verbal extension in Bantu, but it doesn't make sense to use the at, the contactive, to the verb to hunt. So I think there is influence from the neighboring languages, influence from South Nilotic on South Cushitic. There's influence on Langi to take sakat rather than sak, either from South Cushitic or from Datooga or from both. And then it may be evidence that for that claim that Derek Nurse has, that Rangi and Chaga form a group. So that would be a very old transfer then. But anyway, so it's a very interesting verb.
I'll add another data point in Hadza to shoot an arrow is haka.
Yeah.
So we have this lateral. I don't know how far we want to bring that, but sure. Add that to the pile.
Yeah, I have that, but yeah, it lacks the initial consonant. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very nice word. The ko, I'm interested in that, to see somebody. The verb ko, I didn't have that verb in Rangi. To me, it looks like a strange verb with no a in the end. Do we know how we inflect that verb? Do we have any Rangi speaker here in the audience or in the speakers?
No, Amina has Rangi in his repertoire, some Rangi in her repertoire. But then when she went with the verb in Haubi, the Rang speakers in Haubi were uncomfortable. And they pointed out rightly that it appears to be available in the Rang spoken around the Cushitic speakers.
Well, let me just quickly interject, because this links directly into a question that Lizzie Poole has asked in the chat. She asks, were there any differences in the acceptability of loans in different parts of the Rangi area? It would be interesting to see if they were either more or less acceptable, depending on whether people are aware of the origins.
Sure. There this difference in acceptability. As I've said, we went to Sakami and Kwahengwa, which are mixed. There are speakers of Alagwa, speakers of Rangi and Gorwaa. But there are some of the villages, such as Haubi, are purely inhabited currently, inhabited by Rangi alone. Therefore, after we identified the loanwords, I had to go back to Haubi and test whether some of the words are accepted or not. For instance, the verb ko, they rejected it and they said, possibly it is a verb, if it is used by Rangi, it might be the Rangi which are mixed with Alagwa and Gorwaa. Again, we have the word like sakai, which is a wild fruit, and in Rangi it is called the chakai. They rejected it totally. They said, they even showed me the picture of the fruit, and they said in Rangi, the fruits is called the Matras. Therefore, some of the words, they seem to be Rangi words which are borrowed by only Rangi living with Alagwa and Gorwaa. And for those villages which are purely inhabited by Rangi, such as Haubi and Muisanga, such words are not accepted at all. So it looks like there are two phases where Rangi borrowed the word. The first phase took place when they firstly landed in Kondoa, yeah, and the history showed that when they started living in Kondoa, some of them, they started living in Haubi, and they, according to informant now, the Rangi were arrogant, therefore they had to chase Alagwa and Gorwaa and Burunge, of course. So Burunge, they went to Goima. The Alagwa and Qorro, they went to other villages, such as Sakami, Kwahengwa, Matanga, Naimo, and therefore villages such as Haubi, Muisanga remain to be purely Rangi villages here.
I'm interested, Amina, in this village versus individual approach. So the idea of going to an area and saying, in Haubi, this word is accepted versus this one. I think that this is interesting, and this is, this could lead to interesting data. But why look at a word or forms being acceptable in a certain geographic area? So saying, okay, this was accepted in Haubi, versus looking at the actual linguistic biographies of the individuals that you're asking. So of the three people that we asked, we noticed that the person who accepted this form as Rangi also spoke Gorwaa, or maybe had a mother or father who spoke Gorwaa. I wonder, what do we lose and what do we gain by looking at it through a village lens versus looking at it through an individual lens? And while you're thinking about that answer, Amina, and you can answer in a second, going back to Ketala and Kitala, I noticed that Bonnie Sands has written Kitarut is a raised bed made of clay in Nandi, and we have a word Madarajeg is Datooga for huts. We also have Akie is Talaita for pole or post, and in Dinka we have I don't know if this is an aspirated T or a theta sound, so it's either tel or thel, which is the beam of a house, or a cross piece, or a pole or log. So Bonnie is giving us some interesting data from Nilotic languages that show that we have forms that are somewhat similar.
Kitarut, Kitarat, and the Chaga case, which Martin Mous has pointed out.
Yeah, certainly.
And I wanted to ask him while he was talking that, is it now some kind of indication that Chaga had an influence of the, I think Chaga had an influence of the Nilotic speakers based on this word, Sakata or Sakati, which is not available elsewhere in Bantu as a Bantu verb.
Derek and Girard, they proposed this subgroup of Chaga plus Taveta and Taita Bantu linking to Rangi and maybe also Mbugwe. So at one point that must have been, if they are correct, that must have been one language. And where was that language? I mean, but that proto-language, that may have been in contact with either South Cushitic or South Nilotic for this word. But they proposed that played mainly on on phonological, morphological criteria, arguments, and they have very little lexical. And this is, I think I have maybe three words that could link Jaga and Rangi and not more. So lexically is very little, but yeah, it could maybe suggest that the Jaga comes from Rangi area, maybe.
Okay.
But it's very speculative. I mean, and there's very little evidence.
Just reaching back into our RVN archive, of course, Derek Nurse gave a talk a couple of years back talking about Rangi as a cladelet and connections to Chaga there. So this talk by Derek Nurse is in our archive.
Can I ask about one word that really puzzles me and has been puzzling me for a while? The word losona, a ceremony among the Alagwa, a kind of, but it's also exists in the Rufu Bantu languages for being the dance, the ceremony after initiation, and so Ronda. What's her name? Ronstadt proposed that this is from Cushitic, and I wonder, could it be the other way around? Do we have a word like losona for a ceremony, a dance in Rangi at all?
Maybe Amina could help us.
Losona.
No, I never had such words.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you.
But we have in some other languages lukino, which comes from the verb kina.
Yeah. I like this law, Lu, because I mean some of these dances are in lines, so that fits to me with the class anyway.
But before we get too bogged down in individual lexical items, I want to take a step back to the methodology, to the locations versus individuals. Somebody out of you three answer me on this. What do we lose and what do we gain?
For me, I would treat loanwords which occur in the areas where we have the Cushitic speakers and the Bantu Rangi speakers to be. And if they have not gone any further to the Rangi alone areas, that would mean the nativization is not fully fledged. So it means those people who are living in the neighborhood, they have borrowed some cultural phenomena amongst themselves, which could be understood within the environment where they live. But they cannot extend further. I was thinking of the Sukuma, who are in, say, in Meatu, and the other Meatu is close to, very close to the Hadza, and the other ones who are north in say in Magu, which is in the shores of Lake Victoria. So the borrowing from Hadza on the Makarita, which is Margarita in Meatu. Margarita is a fruit, is a wild product. And this Margarita is known in Meatu, which is at the tip of the Hadza land, but it's well known further north in Magu. So, it's there in the context of the environment where it's used, and the people who have inhabited the Cushitic and the Cushitic Bantu settlements in Kondoa, who live in the neighborhood, say 2 or 3 or 5 kilometers apart. They have developed some culture which is distinct to the Rangi people who inhabit Haubi, which is more or less like, I was thinking of the some of the loanwords from Rangi into Gorwaa might be known in areas which are in Kondoa, but are known in the typical Babati area like Galapo or north of Galapo. And we have to think now, where do we go and obtain our data? And how do we say now, this is an integrated loan word. It's available in the language. Are you thinking of seeing data for a dictionary? Do we enter in the Rangi dictionary or we drop it? That will be another question for us to ponder around.
Brilliant. And I hope that we do continue pondering this. I see that we are running a little bit over our time, so I think I would like to call it for questions and comments for today. But before we completely finish, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that recordings of all of the presentations in the Rift Valley webinar series can be found on the Rift Valley YouTube channel as well as on Zenodo, and entries for each presentation are added to the Rift Valley bibliography. And I would like to thank Amina, Kuria, and Amani again for their presentation, and I would like to thank everybody else here for participating today. And I hope to see you again at our next webinar.